Welcome, beautiful people, and thank you for joining us on Till the Wheels Fall Off, a podcast by Two Folk Couple. I'm Matt.
And I'm Paige.
And we're here to inspire others, to bring you guys into our lives and tell you a little bit about our journey. Over 20 years together, we've learned a few things.
We're going to work toward being the best version of yourself possible. We're going to dig into building a positive mindset, discuss mental health, addiction recovery, improving fitness, building businesses, and insight into what it takes to navigate life today.
Welcome back to another episode of Till the Wheels Fall Off. I am Matt.
I'm Paige.
Today we're going to be talking about embracing growth in an uncertain world, what it means to be resilient. We're going to be talking about several concepts that direct you toward a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, some things that might stand in your way, where the fear of change comes from, what does it mean to have a growth mindset, and some strategies for handling change. Before we do that, if you haven't subscribed to the show, followed the show, left us a review, we'd really appreciate you doing that. It helps us become more discoverable in a sense, so other people can stumble across it the same way that you did. It shoots us up the search results. I'm not 100% sure how that algorithm works, but I know it has to do with reviews and subscribes. So if you could, please do that. If you didn't know, we also have a course called Independently Strong that is directed toward this very thing, toward making you more resilient, toward helping you navigate change and growth in your own life, particularly as it pertains to dealing with someone who's in addiction. How do you rebuild a relationship if that is your goal? What does that even look like? Or if that's not an option, what is next for you? The course effectively rebuilds your self-esteem. It helps you find yourself again, to discover your inner fire, and to walk a path of growth and recovery, just like Paige did and many other people that are in the course. You get access to weekly calls, Zoom calls, so they're more like video calls where you get to share your experience of the coursework and what's going on in your life with other people. And it's a really, really healthy community. You can get 75% off that course right now by using the code Wheelies75. Again, that's Wheelies75. We've also got a weekly newsletter that is totally free. You can check that out by going to our website, www.twfo.com. Scroll all the way to the bottom, enter your email address, and then it's going to send you like a confirmation email. Make sure you click that or you won't get it. And that happens a lot.
Check your junk mail.
Because we can't sign you up. Like, we can't just spam people by entering email addresses. So you gotta look for that email. And while you're there, if you'd like, check out our merch. We've got shirts, hats, stickers, and recovery rocks available. If you're not sure what a recovery rock is, like, what the hell, that sounds kind of weird. I'm holding one right now. On the front, it's got our logo. On the back, it says, "Thank you for being my rock." It's a really cool token of appreciation that you can give to someone that has walked with you through a really tough recovery process, letting them know, I see you, and I make a vow to honor your experience through continued growth. We've also got a community, if you weren't aware, free community on Facebook. You can find that by going to our website or clicking the link in any of our social media profiles. That'll get you there. It's thousands of people that are fans of the show that are going through the same things, and they share with each other, they share experience, they get validated, they get educated, they get empowered, and ultimately walk a path of recovery for themselves.
We do self-care challenges, weekly challenges when Matt and I go live on Sundays and just chat with you guys at that point.
We didn't go live this last week because it's been a whirlwind of a week.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit.
We're recording this on Labor Day, and I slept till like 9:30 this morning.
You slept in.
I took a nap yesterday, and as a result, I didn't go to bed until like 1 or 2 in the morning. This is the worst part about naps for me, is that
I didn't go to bed until about midnight too.
Oh,
and
man.
I'm really tired today.
Same.
But I haven't had coffee in a week now.
You're a maniac. I know that there's benefits to that. I'm just unwilling to do it right now. Just absolutely unwilling to do it. But the topic of this show, this particular show, came up because we had, like I mentioned, a whirlwind of a week.
We had a very weird week.
So we were part of an online community for several years. Like, when did you join that?
2022, January 2022.
So it's a weight loss program, one that we've mentioned here on the show before. And it's got a community that's, at the time, was exactly what you needed. I mean,
yes.
It was a really supportive place where you could deal with the incredibly hard and difficult path of changing old habits and the way that you ate and exercising even when you didn't feel like it, and all the challenges that come with that. You know, it was a really good place for you to grow. It's a really healthy community. I mean, we flew around the country to meet with people. We made some incredible friends there.
Yeah.
Just amazing people.
Yeah.
Well, this last week, it got shut down, and there was all kinds of confusion as to why, and part of it was business related, and then there were some other things that came up that were more personal, and it was time to move on from it. I think that's what we ultimately came to the decision to do, was move on from it. And with that came all the emotions. It's like there's a bit of grief, there's a bit of reflection.
It was all of the emotions of grief, actually. Yeah. It was shock, denial, like, oh, is this really happening? Anger.
Bargaining.
Yeah, bargaining, sadness.
Acceptance.
And then it finally came to the acceptance piece. But this is one of those moments where I actually went through all of the emotions, and I didn't immediately at first say, oh, it's no big deal. I'll just get over it. I'll go through this. Oh, it's no big deal. Because that was something that I would do in the past too. Or I would get stuck in like a sad, depressive state, and I wouldn't know how to crawl out. I wouldn't allow myself to crawl out of it. But this last week, it was more of like, you know what? I'm going to let myself feel all the feels. I'm going to let myself go through all of these emotions. And it was the best thing I ever did for myself, because by the time I got to the acceptance piece, it was like, okay, this is like a relief in a way. It just felt good because I actually processed all of the emotions.
Which is a huge change from the way that you would have handled this 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. I would say that 2 or 3. I don't know about 2 or 3 years ago, but yeah.
Would have been a bit of spiraling and just like a longer state of, I guess you could call it depression.
Yeah, because it was something that I put all my heart and soul into. I learned a lot of things. I met a lot of people. I thought it was, and it was a great program. I did learn a lot from it, but it ran its course for me. And I accepted that and decided, you know what? I'm not going to get stuck in this sadness. I'm not going to get stuck in this depression, because there would be things many years ago that I would see like on social media. Okay, let's say that somebody's family member passed away or something like that. I would take that on. And I would be like, okay, you know what? I can't post my good times on social media because I don't want to be insensitive to this other person who just lost somebody. And I was like, that's not healthy, right? That's not really a very healthy mindset to have. So I would spiral. I would just go deep into this dark depression that had nothing to do with me, So I learned over the years, I got all of the tools. I figured out, you know what? I can't allow myself to sit in that depressive state any longer. I'm going to have to pull myself out of it and move on. And every time something in life happens, anytime there's some type of life change or something that occurs, I'm able to get out of it much quicker and easier with the tools that I've learned.
Yeah, and you did a fantastic job. I mean, considering this was such an important thing to you for so many years, like you've come out of it and you were able to extract the pieces of it that you felt a lot of gratitude for.
Yeah.
You were able to accept the things that you couldn't change within that. Like, as much as you would want to go back to a time when it was really, really special and amazing and it felt new and it felt necessary in some ways, you're able to accept that, hey, whatever happened, and I'm okay with that. I'm able to work through that, extract the things I need from it, and carry on with my life.
Yeah.
And so it got us thinking about our own community. And I posted in our community this week because it made me reflect a lot about how important communities are for a lot of people and their healing. Maybe not even just healing, maybe just networking, maybe just, there's a certain time in your life where you discover something about yourself, and then you discover other people that are going through the same thing, and you make connections in there that are really important to you for a period of time. I went through this with, coincidentally enough, another gym.
Yeah.
This was several years ago, and this was like my life for a while. It was a really important part of my own recovery. It was me kind of taking charge of my own health again and doing hard things that were leading to growth and perseverance and a lot of life lessons. And the same thing happened. It fell apart. Part of it was business. Part of it was other personal things that came to light. And there was a period of time there where it was just, I couldn't imagine life without it. Yeah. And then it died off. And so we both learned a lot of lessons of the importance of community, but also the importance of impermanence and understanding that good things just don't last forever. Like nothing gold can stay forever. And for us as creators, for us as people that tell our story, and we kind of guide people through a process that didn't otherwise know that there was even a process for spouses and partners to understand this kind of stuff. And how do you grow from this? How do you rebuild from this? And I think that the biggest takeaway that I had from this was that we never wanted TUFO to be like permanent for anyone's life. Like we don't necessarily even want like lifelong listeners. Like we don't want to be a destination for people. We want to be a stop along the way.
Yeah.
We want to provide people tools that they can use that they need at a certain time in their life. And then at some point, like you graduate and you move forward and you look back on that time in your life when we might have been necessary. You might have needed to hear these messages. You might have needed our community more than anything. But that's not our goal, is to keep people there.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of communities screw that up.
I think so too.
I think business gets in the way.
It's their only way. Like, this is the only way. This is what you need. You need this for the rest of your life. And that kind of gets people stuck thinking that, oh, this is going to be there forever. Yeah. So I need to depend on this, and they're going to rely on that, and they're going to be stuck on that, when in reality, life changes. Things change.
Yeah, I think that business gets in the way for a lot of the creators and people that are in charge of communities like this.
For sure.
Where like it's not a wise business move to encourage your people to move on from you. But that's not why we're here. It's just not. And like we've always wanted to do things the right way and never wanted to mislead anyone or tell people this is what you need forever. Like at some point we do believe it's necessary, the things we talk about, and like our course and everything else.
Yes.
But like we don't want it to become your life. We just want it to become a tool that you have so you can go live your life. It's not the center of your life forever.
Right.
But so many people kind of keep people stuck. And I think it's very irresponsible of a lot of creators that do this sort of thing. For people that have programs and courses and communities and things like that to make their listeners feel like this is it forever. You have to be here forever. If you ever want to succeed, this is it forever. It's really convenient for the people in charge because you look at revenue streams and recurring revenue and all that stuff that comes with it. But if we can't succeed doing it the right way, we'd rather just not succeed. That's fine with us.
Yeah.
Like, we're totally content with that. And I'm okay with that. And I think it's a better way to look at things. I think that it's more responsible. Like as a creator, like you have a duty, you have a responsibility to people. And it would be irresponsible of us to make people think that this is going to be their life till the end of time.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
AA. That's something that you've been doing for 11 years, and it's something that you continue to do. But do you feel like you would ever outgrow it, or is it something that you're going to be doing for the rest of your life?
I think in a lot of ways I have outgrown it. It's taken on a different meaning to me than it did when I was early on. Like when I was early in it, I was around a group of people and I felt safe around those people because they were just people that I could relate to, that had the same struggles and challenges as me. And I could be myself and just feel like I was welcome for being me, not pretending to be someone else.
Right.
And then over time, like this is my philosophy, and this is just my personal opinion on things like recovery groups like AA or anything else, is that like it shouldn't be your life. Like recovery teaches us how to live again. And I just happen to find some pieces of that path in AA. The reason I go today, it's selfish reasons I go today. I go to be reminded of people that thought that they could go out, drink again, and they had it all figured out, and they come back with arrows in their ass and remind me that it didn't get any better, and like it still sucks out there.
Right.
And to give back a little bit, to be there for other people that are going through it, like to help them in their recovery journeys. I think that's important. But no, it doesn't mean the same thing to me today as it did then. Not even close.
But you had to go all in on it, like
I went all in
to
for
get the
quite a
benefits
while.
from it.
Right,
and
yeah.
I agree with that with certain programs, just like the program that I was in. I had to go all in order to gain the tools that I needed. And now that since I went all in, now I'm able to be okay without them.
Right.
And that's how I want TUFO as well. It's like you can go all in with all the things that we have, but then you're going to come out and you'll be able to use the tools that we give you in life.
You're going to outgrow us, and we hope that you do.
Yeah.
Like, that's our hope for you.
Yeah.
Ultimately is that you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm beyond this. What's the next frontier for me look like?
Right.
We want to get people to that point. Like I don't know, like with AA, early on, I went to a ton of meetings and I was fully invested and I was like drinking all the Kool-Aid,
Yeah.
And I needed to, but now there was quite a while where I didn't go to a meeting for months and months and months and months. I feel more useful and more purposeful when I'm able to help other people, like just in general, no matter what I'm doing. And that gives me a really good outlet to do that. But I don't need it the same way I used to. No. Recovery, like back then I was just going to meetings and I was drinking the AA Kool-Aid. Now I'm reading tons and tons of articles and studies and different books about just growth and psychological frames and ideas and philosophical ideas. Like I'm reading that kind of stuff, and I never did back then. And AA is a much smaller piece of my recovery today.
Yeah.
It's just not as necessary to me. Like I learned a lot from it and I'll always be grateful for it, but it's evolved. It's just evolved. And I think that's important for me personally anyway. Like I'm not telling anyone this is what you need to do, but it's just what worked for me. Like there are a lot of people who go through a program like AA in the beginning and then they graduate onto different things and they live happily ever after. Like I don't believe that it should be your life forever. Yeah. I personally believe that it teaches you how to live and then now go live your life.
Yeah, yeah. And learn from other things.
Yeah, and remember like what you learned there. Don't forget the things that you learned
exactly.
there. But it shouldn't be like your life forever. Now there's a lot of lifers that disagree with me and like fine, like whatever, you can disagree. That's your opinion.
Well, I think that's why a lot of people had a lot of issues with what happened last week with what was going on, is that it was like their life. They've put so much into it, and I can understand, feeling a certain way about that. But I've been around change a lot within my life, and I know that things will change. I know change is inevitable. It's going to happen in anything that you do. So I kind of want to just get into that about how change is inevitable and how it's going to impact all different parts of your life. And it's better to just be prepared to know, like, okay, things can change and will change. Just like me being prepared if you relapse or whatnot. I want to love you forever and be together forever and have those, the perfect marriage, but that may not happen.
Right.
So we have to be prepared for that.
100%. I think that's kind of the frame that this conversation will take, is like change is inevitable. It is a guarantee. They say that the only guarantees in life are death and taxes. I would add to that by saying change. Yep. Change is inevitable. You will be a different person a year from now, 2 years from now. Your life will look different. Your friend group will look different. It is just a guarantee. It is a guarantee that things will change. Something will happen in life that will change the course of direction, and you will have to adapt. Mm-hmm. Like so much of what we do here, I believe underneath it all is about it's about adaptability and resilience and preparing people for that. Because a lot of times spouses and partners are struggling with this. It's this change. It's this thing that they felt was a guarantee. Yep. It was like marriage,
yes.
And it's
exactly.
like this relationship that they thought would always be there forever. And they come to find out like maybe that's just not so. And many of them get stuck in this cycle of trying to return to a time that is just no longer there. It's no longer available, and it will never be that way again.
Right.
It will look different. Now you can roll with that and figure out what that looks like for you, or you can keep trying to shove this round peg in the square hole and return these feelings that are just no longer there.
Yeah. So if there's a change that's happening, the first process is going to be accepting it in your heart, like being okay with whatever feeling is going to happen. If you're angry, if you're sad, if you're kind of shocked, accept that feeling first. Go through that feeling. Feel it. If you shove it under the rug and just say, oh, I'm just going to let this go, everything will be okay, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. You have to feel those feels. And that's what I learned throughout the years.
Yeah. And like what you're kind of hinting at there is this concept of impermanence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's philosophical as much as it is psychological, is that impermanence is exactly what you just described. It is this idea that even the situations in your life, whether it be a job or a relationship or a place that you're living, the feelings that you have, the emotions that come, the age and the height of your children, every bit of it is impermanent, and it's always in constant motion. But we can become so hyper fixated on one thing. It's really easy to do this and get distracted and forget that like things are impermanent. Mm-hmm. And we come to rely upon life and its guarantees. And that is, you're setting yourself up for a big letdown when that happens. And it's not, I don't think anyone's perfect at it. They're constantly living in this state of like understanding impermanence. Yes. And being like, I don't know, maybe if you're Buddhist or something and like you living in a monastery somewhere, like maybe that you are really good at understanding and recognizing impermanence. But for the rest of us that are out here just trying to pay bills and live their lives, it becomes a shock when something like this happens. Mm-hmm. But impermanence and acceptance are actually the topic of my newsletter this week. It was kind of a weird one. Like I had you read it first because I was like, this one's kind of goofy. I don't know if anyone's going to understand this really.
I loved it.
So there's this Japanese concept. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation because it's tough to translate. Yeah. It's mono no aware, I think is how you say it. Huh. It's spelled like mono no aware.
Okay.
But it is this idea that it's the, I think it translates into the pathos of things, or an empathy toward things. And it's when you look back on a time in your life and you recognize that the things are impermanent, like there's this sadness and somber feeling that you have, but at the same time, there's this gratitude and appreciation for the things that were. Like I described it in the newsletter as like, think about how you feel in the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't know. Some people might celebrate it, but they might be like, Paige is raising her hand. Like, thank God that shit's over. But for me, it's always been like a somber time because I think about like those 60 days or whatever that the season goes, or 6 weeks, actually, not 60 days, like 6 weeks that the holiday season is, like basically from Thanksgiving on. It's a magical time for a lot of people. Like it's like we think more about other people. We give more than we normally do. Like we understand, like we focus on gratitude. We get together as families, and like in those moments, like there's so much to be gained from that beauty and that wonderful feeling, so much so that we can get caught up in it. And on the 26th of December, like you wake up with this hangover, this feeling that like, oh my God, like just such reverence for that period of time and everything that it was and everything that it felt like. And then understanding that it's gone now and it won't return. It'll never be exactly the way it was. And there's a beauty and a sadness in that. And that's how I would encompass like that Mono no Aware. It's like that feeling of reverence for the past and the understanding that things are impermanent. Yeah. But I think that you can apply this to relationships. You can apply this to jobs. You can apply this to periods of time in your life. Like if you moved away for college and you just had this amazing transformational experience living away from home for the first time, like you'll hold those things in special regard for the rest of your life. But with some other things, it's more difficult, like relationships and people and death. Situations that are just kind of blindside you, like addiction, like an addicted loved one, finding out about that, and then recognizing that all this could fall apart tomorrow, or maybe it already has fallen apart and you're just having a hard time coming to terms with it. Like it's just as much about acceptance as it is impermanence. And impermanence is an understanding that things are always changing, things will always change, that emotions are just visitors. They are temporary visitors. They pop into your life for a period of time, and after you process them, they're gone. You learn a little something from them. Acceptance is being able to pull the little pieces of gratitude from those experiences and sort of deposit them into this bank where you can become more resilient and move forward, and you're able to identify things that you're grateful for, even some tough experiences. But it's something that I don't think just comes natural for a lot of people, and especially people who are blindsided with this massive change. Like my marriage is falling apart. It's just, what do I do? How do you handle that? And I think a lot of it just comes from the psychological fear of change. Yeah. And it's the opposite of exactly what we talked about just now. It's feeling like life is permanent, life has guarantees, and it just doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. Maybe on like we were talking about this, like on a short enough time horizon, you could argue that there are guarantees. You could say that like the chances that we get divorced before the end of the day are so low, I would say it's a guarantee, right? But stretch it out over a long enough time horizon and anything's possible. Yeah. Anything. Yeah. It's just so hard to wrap our heads around that at times. It really is. And so we come to fear change because we get really comfortable in the guarantees of life and the familiarity that comes with the people that we talk to in any given day, the emotional safety that we get from the guarantee. But it's all just an illusion. It is. Every bit of it's an illusion. Right. You know, and so there is something to be said about stepping out of that and understanding that all things are impermanent. Right. Things are constantly in motion. There are no guarantees in life. And so if that's the case, then what do we do? And how do we prepare ourselves better for change when it does happen? And so we do that with just simply what we're going to refer to as a growth mindset. Yeah. A growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is kind of what we just discussed. And before I go into that, like I would like to hear from you about a fixed mindset. Like you mentioned as we were setting this up, like you kind of operated with this for a little while, right? I did. And I still do it in certain parts of my life. Like I have a growth mindset in some areas and I have a fixed mindset in other areas, but I'm willing to shift and change them and, move them around. But the fixed mindset, we usually believe that we just have these traits that they're not going to change. Like, this is just who I am. I'm not going to be able to fix that. I can't correct that. And it was like we discussed with me and talking with people in public. And I believe we've talked about this on the podcast before, but it gets brought up a lot because even my daughter has finally stung me with this one recently. Yeah, she did. So, Matt had brought it to my attention
couple of months ago about how I'm very standoffish in public and I'm very quiet and I might look like a bitch.
You're the sweetest person in the world, but you'd never know it.
No, I mean, I may have resting bitch face. I don't know. It's kind of been something I've done for a long time. I'm a little bit of an introvert. Outside. I have social anxiety, and I can sit here and tell you all of these reasons why I do these things, but I don't want to be that way. So a fixed mindset would be, I'm going to just keep doing this. But a growth mindset would say, you know what, I'm going to work on that. That's not who I have to be. I don't have to be that person. I can actually be more approachable. I can actually talk with more people, which honestly, I'm working on this because I started dance again. So I'm getting myself out there a lot. I've been a recluse for a long time since, the kids were little. I was a stay-at-home mom. I've stayed home. I didn't have things that were outside. I didn't have communities to go to. I didn't do things. But recently my daughter made a comment to me because she was having a rough time. She's 12 in 7th grade, and y'all, this is fun times. But she mentioned to me that I don't get involved like she wants me to. And it stung a little bit because I was like, you know what, at first, I got angry. I got defensive.
Yeah.
I did. I got defensive because I was like, I'm trying my hardest. I work really hard. I'm not, I know I could do better, blah, blah, blah. But I knew that wasn't, this is what we were going to discuss, by the way. And then we're having a whole topic on it. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Sidetrack. So we had the whole defensive part, and then I finally stopped and I paused and I took about an hour to actually reflect on this. And she and I had a conversation about it. And I said, you're right. I'm really bad about putting myself out there. I'm afraid, I have this fixed mindset of like, that's just who I am, but I promise I'm going to do better and I'm going to work on it. And I'm going to, be there for you. Let me know what I can do for you that would make you feel more comfortable. And this is another thing I told her. I said, this is the first time I'm being a parent to a 12-year-old. And this is the first time you're a 12-year-old with a parent. So we're both learning together and navigating these things.
So true.
And it's true. And it was a really good conversation. But it was like, okay, Matt has said it to me that you need to basically, like, he called me out. He challenged me. And again, it stung at me. It stung at first. And I had been working on it, but it came up again a couple of months later from my daughter. And I decided that, okay, I got the growth mindset. This is not who I want to be. I don't have to be that way. I'm not going to make excuses. It's no different than whenever I was a very anxious person, okay? Super anxious person. I didn't use my anxiety as an excuse to do things. I was like, I'm not going to use my anxiety. That is not exactly who I am. I'm going to find new tools, new coping mechanisms. I'm going to figure this out because my anxiety is affecting everyone else. My depression was affecting everyone else. My social anxiety was affecting everybody else. It was starting to affect my child, starting to affect my husband. So I decided that I need to change something. And that's what a growth mindset is. It means that you can change things. It's not going to happen immediately. It's not going to be that quick, but you're aware of it and you're able to actually fix things and stop making excuses for these issues that you're having.
Yeah, and that's a really great example of a fixed mindset when it comes to one of your personal character attributes that you may have, like social anxiety, just indifference toward people in general. Like, you like people, but you don't really like people, like on the whole. I think
I'm as being an HSP, I overstimulate and I get like really just like, I overanalyze everything. And then it makes me overthink. And then I'm like, okay, I'm better off if I don't say anything because then I can't be criticized for things that I don't say. So I'm just going to back up. And that's a fear that I have. And that's crazy. Like, that's not growth. That's fixed. That's a fixed mindset saying that I have a fear, so I'm just not going to do anything. I'd rather just sit back and observe when I really just need to put myself out there. Yeah. I had to get ready for it though, but I had to be challenged too.
And you mentioned something there, being highly sensitive, a highly sensitive person. Sensory processing sensitivity is another term for it. Dr. Taylor's newsletter was actually about, did you read it yet?
I haven't read it
yet.
You
gotta check it out. It's really
I had
good.
appointments
It's really,
this morning.
really, really good. It's about the day that he discovered that this was going on within him. And it made a lot of sense as to why he was the way he was. But that's a nuanced thing. And I don't want to get I don't want to get railed by people who are discovering things like this about themselves, like and tell them that this is wrong to feel this way or anything, because it's not. You're going to feel however you need to feel. You'll process this in your own time. This is just how we dealt with some of our own. Like being an addict, like as much as it isn't part of my identity, it's not, because it's really easy to say, well, that's what I am and that's who I am. And because that's who I am, I'm excluded from doing all these things. And it's my excuse to not do all these things. People can do this with various different ailments or disorders or anything else. Like some people, like neurodivergency is the big one now. Like people who have varying degrees of attention deficit disorder will come out and essentially it becomes like a running joke for people. It's like, I have ADHD and that's why I'm essentially not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. And it's because I have ADHD, without acknowledging the fact that they need to build skills and tools or whatever it might be. Some people take the medication path. We're always about skills before pills.
Yes.
No hate on anybody that just chooses to medicate themselves with you and your doctor. That is between you guys. But I'm just saying, a lot of people will just say, I have this thing, therefore, as opposed to I have this thing and here's what I'm going to do.
Yes.
And you can fall into a victim mindset this way too, where like, yeah, you're right. Some horrible things have happened to you that have led you down this path to where you are now. And if those things had never happened, you're probably right. You wouldn't be in the situation that you're in right now, whether that be past trauma or abuse or any other thing that may have happened that puts you in this position. But it's what are we going to do to move forward?
Yeah.
That is more important to me than this is what happened, therefore I am this way. And same thing for you, like being highly sensitive, like you have more mirror neurons in your brain than the normal person. Like you feel empathy deeper than the person who's describing whatever they've just been through. Like and there's studies about this. I mean, this is real. Like that can be a huge setback for people. That can be a huge drawback for you. But rather than just saying that's who I am and being a victim, you're going to take that and move forward.
Yeah.
So like being in a relationship with someone who's narcissistic or addictive or abusive in any number of ways, it's no doubt caused you grief and pain and all these things that you don't deserve. You're right. But being a victim it just can't end there. It cannot stop there. It has to keep moving forward. And we talked about impermanence, like as much as these things have happened to you that have led you to where you are, like they too can be impermanent depending on what you decide to do next.
Yeah.
And what steps you choose to take to move forward through that. It's huge. And I think that this is the kind of stuff I wish they would teach in school.
Oh,
like
yeah.
really, like this is the kind of stuff that I wish we would have learned at a younger age. This is the kind of stuff I wish my parents would have taught me, but they just didn't. So I had to take it into my own hands. And this is why we're having this conversation here.
Yeah.
Is we all have this fundamental fear of change. Because in a lot of ways, life is also set up these days to make it as easy as possible. You know, like everything, the most successful companies in the world are ones that make life more convenient. In any number of ways. It's about convenience. It's about ease. It's about making things simple. And I don't think that the process of growth is ever going to be simple or convenient or easy. And so it's like the one area of our lives where you can't cheat.
Yeah.
You can't. Like there's, science has got wonderful ways of helping people through advances in modern medicine and whatnot, but you're still going to have to do some work. And it's not a scary thing, right? The scary part for a lot of people is just the impermanence of it all and the recognition that there are no guarantees. What happens tomorrow has nothing to do with today. It's like this, it's scary. Like you're thrown out and anything is possible. Like you're thrown out to any number of variables and you kind of have to deal with it. And it's freaking scary. So let's talk about growth mindset and how that helps versus the fixed mindset, like this victim mentality and this victim identity, depending on whatever you might have. So walk us through growth.
Well, growth is... It's scary, like you said, because you're so used to the familiar. You're so used to this comfort zone that's not necessarily comfortable, like it's familiar. And then the growth, you're thinking, okay, but then if I'm going to change, that means that what I've done up to this point doesn't matter, or what I've done up to this point is where I'm supposed to be, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of where a lot of people get stuck too, because then you're like, but it's very rigid thinking. I've had this thought before as well, is that if I am stuck in this place where I've been going and doing these things over and over again, I'm like, okay, that's just who I am. I'm scared to grow. I'm scared to get out of that, because then it means that all of that is not true, which is silly, right? That's stupid. That doesn't make any sense, because you have to be grateful for all the things that you've been through in order to get to where you are now. But the growth mindset is just, it helps you handle change in ways that you never thought possible. Because each time something changes in life and you have this growth mindset, you're more resilient towards it. You're more like, okay, what can I do to make this easier on myself to get through it? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's guaranteed it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like a growth mindset essentially it's the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort.
Yeah.
Like you can develop, learning can be developed. Like you can just be persistent and figure things out. Like I was a terrible student in math. Like I did algebra 1 3 times, I think, in high school. I graduated high school with a 1.2 GPA.
Yeah.
I graduated college with like a 3.98. And it was just through persistence and growth and failure and just being more stubborn than my natural abilities that I was able to grow through that. You know, like that's one example of it. You mentioned learning from criticism. That's also another example of it. Mm-hmm. Like taking criticism and rather than just saying, well, I'm that way because of this and just ending it there. I'm that way because I'm neurodivergent. I'm that way because I had a rough, childhood. I'm that way because my spouse is addicted and treated me a certain way. And just stopping this conversation there, it's understanding that, okay, these things did happen. That's valid. Your feelings are valid about that.
Yep.
But what comes next? And being able to learn from criticism, whether that's from yourself or from other people. I'm not saying like learning from necessarily like judgment or being harsh or just criticism. Just like I lack in certain areas. We all do.
Constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism, right.
Yeah.
Persistence in the face of setbacks. So like, kind of back to the school thing, like every time I would struggle really, really hard, rather than just giving up, just be persistent. I'm going to keep at this. Like for a lot of wheelies, I've seen them more than anything. What I've seen people do is adopt a growth mindset and become people that they swore they could never be. Like the person that many people are today that have been listening to us for a year, like they never dreamed they could be that woman. They never dreamed they could be that man. They never dreamed that could be their life. It was just about someone telling them it's possible, roughly showing them what a path looked like, and then they took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
And like, you can do anything. You can reinvent yourself tomorrow. It's your decision. Like there's nothing in life that says I have to be the person tomorrow that I am today. Or even when you wake up, like you don't have to be that person. You don't have to be them.
No.
In some ways we make a choice.
Yeah.
Not to say that your past doesn't have anything to do with it. I'm just saying we do make a choice and we can reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what growth mindset's about.
Absolutely.
And you can take any situation you've ever been through and say, like, am I going to be a victim or am I going to grow from this? Like, there are a million reasons that addicts fall into the situations they're in. And we've talked about this in depth on this podcast about how that's oftentimes the hardest struggle for a lot of spouses when it comes to compassion. And because they understand so well why they are the way they are. Like they understand because of the childhood. They understand because they witnessed something traumatic as a child or PTSD through military service or any number of things that led them here. And they'll stay there and they'll say, well, he's just this way because of that. And I understand that. And so you stick around. All the while you are harming yourself, your children and everything else. Understanding's part of the battle, but what are we going to do to empower ourselves?
Yeah.
Like education's part of it. But once you've got that, then what are you going to do? Like, this is no knock to anyone who is in a stage in their recovery in our community that needs validation. They need to vent. They need to come in there and talk about what they're going through and what they're feeling or anything else. But it's not our goal for you to come in there and just vent.
No.
It's not. Like, it's not supposed to be a place where you just vent for years.
Right.
That's not productive.
No, it's not. You do need to get things off your chest that you're dealing with, and that's important because the validation piece is important. But after that, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to move forward? What are we going to do to shift it? What are we going to do to change it? Because you're not powerless. You're not. You have options. There are things that you can do. And that's the growth mindset, is that you go out there, you feel your feels and you accept those feelings and you get validated. But then you start to make changes and you start making shifts and you start working on self-care and building yourself up and doing all the things. That's change. That's the important change. And that's what you have control over, which is amazing. That's a whole other episode about control. But yeah, necessarily want you to come in there and vent and vent and vent and vent and vent over and over again over the same thing, because that means that you are having the fixed mindset and you're not able to move past something that's so powerful that you can actually move through.
Yeah. And it's not to say there isn't a time and a place for discussing how you've been hurt. There absolutely is.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
we
the
think
whole
that's what
purpose.
sets that community apart from a lot of other ones. That there is validation. You can come in there and vent, and other
Yes.
people are going to say, I felt the same exact way. I'm here for you. I'm with you. I know how bad this hurts.
Yeah.
And that's that. And you're not going to we don't go straight to what's your role in this? What's your part in this? Because I do believe, we both believe that at some point, like, real growth is acknowledging your part in your own suffering, which is oftentimes just showing back up to a situation that you have a pattern and years of behaviors that show you that this is how this works. This is how this ends. And once you have those, you're armed with those facts and you understand it, you have a decision to make. And that's the role that you take in your own recovery, is acknowledging the part that you have in the suffering. So don't get me wrong. If you're listening, you're like, well, I vented like 3 times last week. That's okay.
No, yeah.
That's
sure.
okay. Like, there
Yeah,
will be
yeah.
a period of time, and it might be 3 months. It might be 6 months. Maybe it's a year for people. I don't know. It's some period of time, but you will not get anywhere just venting and not making changes.
Right. So I would think about whenever I was in therapy going through a lot of things, I would have my venting sessions, obviously. And then the next session I would come in and I had done something differently based on our conversation. But the next session I would come in and I might vent about the same thing, but not to it would be at a certain extent, it wasn't like in depth. There would be something new to it. And then I would say, well, this is what I did differently. And this is how I handled this. And I don't know if I can do that, but what can I do here? And that was what helped me get through and change and do all the things, is that I would go through all these different moments of venting about different things at different times, but then I would be making changes in between. So it all goes together as long as you're making changes within yourself during the venting processes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just sitting there and venting will get you essentially nowhere.
Yeah.
It will just...
You'll feel heard, but there's so much more to it than feeling heard.
Yeah, and like I think if you look at the about in our community, like what it says the community is about, this is a growth-oriented group.
Yes.
It's growth-oriented.
Yes.
It's not just a place where you just come and complain about the same thing day after day after day after day for a year and expect anything to change. And at some point, people lose sympathy.
Right.
They lose it because it's
Right.
like, hey, we know, like, we understand that you're hurting. We understand this is really tough. We understand that's a really tough situation that you may or may not be able to leave. But what is one thing that you can do to turn that? And maybe it's not completely leave a situation, but could you take care of yourself today? Could you focus on something that is in your control, like your fitness or your health and your diet, or removing yourself from a situation that's really, really, really bad. Like maybe just going for a walk, maybe taking some time out to read and educate yourself, maybe going to therapy. There's a million things you can do, right?
Yeah.
We want to know about that stuff.
Right.
We want to hear those things.
Let me ask you this. Whenever you have new sponsees or whatnot, and you recognize this type of pattern, if there's like a venting session over and over and over again, and there's no growth, it's more of a fixed mindset. What do you do to help them get out of that, or do you not?
I get really straight with people at some point. In the beginning, it's just like, tell me what's going on.
Right.
And you let people talk and talk and talk and talk. But it comes to a point where it's like, okay, time out. I'm done with this. We're not going to sit here. I am not your therapist. I am not going to just sit here and just tell you that this is all okay forever and ever and ever. At the end of the day, we're trying to grow. We're trying to get better. And part of that is understanding our role in this. Part of it's also identifying the pattern of other people in our lives that are no longer serving us. Now we have a decision to make. Are we still going to be around them or not? I've known people that had really tough jobs it was a major trigger for them to drink. It's like, okay, do you have to work that job? And they tell you a million reasons why they have to, and you listen for a little bit, but then it gets to a point where you start to bring up certain things like, well, is it more important than your health? Is it more important than your family? Is it really that important? Because there's something else you could be doing. And you drop breadcrumbs to lead them to the ultimate, resolution, which is that this no longer serves me. Why am I doing this to myself? They have to see it for themselves, though.
Absolutely.
But at some point, you just have to get straight with people.
But you have boundaries for yourself. Just like I've had boundaries within our relationship of certain things that are discussed where it's like, okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore because nothing changes.
Yeah, you don't
Nothing
change
changes.
anything. I can't.
And then it's like,
keep having
I
this
feel
conversation.
for you, but I'm not going to have that conversation over and over again. So it's very similar with that.
Yeah, we have to have a different conversation at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that many times with people. It's like, you can keep talking about this, but it's not changing anything. Nothing. It's just getting you worked up. Like at some point you have to remove the thing that's working you up.
Yeah.
And you just got to get straight with people. It's tough because people, when they're hurt, the last thing they need to hear is like, this is on you at this point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there is a time period where it is really important to be able to open up and just talk.
Yeah.
And smart people that want to grow will come to the point where they're like, oh, now it's on me, huh? Like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. Let's make some changes, whatever that means.
Yeah. And everyone's journey is different in a sense of the speed of how it goes. And I know that. I understand that some people are quicker than others. Some people are slower, but they're all learning at a different pace. And that's okay too. Totally acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. There was this creator on TikTok earlier that I was listening to, and he was, I don't even know I wouldn't share it anyway. The guy had some wild opinions about just like growth in general. Yeah. He was talking about recovery, and he was like, it was a conversation about dry drunk.
Yeah, white
knuckling sobriety, dry drunk, or whatever else. And he was basically like the thesis that he had was that basically this is a term that just 12-step like big book thumpers use to basically like invalidate the recovery of people that didn't work the 12 steps to get sober. And that's never been my perspective on it. Like I'm on the record many, many times saying like there are more than one way. There's more than one way to get sober and get the same thing I got. And recovery for me isn't just about removing the substance. And that's what, to me, dry drunk is about. It's just about removing the substance. And if you're still an asshole after you've removed the substance, then what's the point of being sober? That's just the way I see it. Like if you're miserable and you're angry and you're still a jerk to everyone and you've still got these narcissistic tendencies and everything else, like that's not really the point.
Right.
It's not really the point. But for him, it was more about like the invalidation of people's recovery that didn't work 12-step. I think that all paths of recovery do have some things in common, and it's this very conversation that we're having right now. It's about adopting a growth mindset. Like Celeste, who will be on the show in the not too distant future, I'm going to get her on. I haven't asked her yet, but I'm going to get her on one way or another. She didn't get sober in 12 steps, man. And she's got a really, really healthy perspective of everything in life. And there's nothing that I don't think that we would disagree on. Mm-hmm. And we did it totally different ways. So like, look, there you go. Like two valid paths, very valid paths, but they all have something in common. And it's just it's this growth mindset. It's acknowledging and dealing with the things that previously triggered drinking or using or whatever it might be. But this guy's contention was basically that you can just remove the substance and everything's fine. And maybe that's the case for him. But that's a dangerous, I think, irresponsible message to be spreading to people because many, many people, alcoholism, addiction is a symptom of many underlying disorders and things that haven't dealt with. So if you're encouraging them not to deal with those things and that's fine, that's terrible. Yeah. That's terrible because what he doesn't know that I know, that we know, is that there are families and spouses that are affected by this shit every single day. Yeah. And if you're encouraging someone to walk around mad at the world and angry and they're a son of a bitch, then I'm against that. And I disagree with you. And I would debate that all day long.
Yeah, he kind of triggered you a little bit.
It's just irritating to invalidate the other things that are affected when recovery isn't properly handled.
Right.
If you're just talking about removing a substance, I'm like, well, what about that guy's wife?
Yeah.
What about his kids?
Yeah.
They're living with a monster. He's just not drinking anymore. Right. And that's okay. You're telling him that's totally valid. And it's just not, man.
Yeah.
Like, let's grow. Let's do something. Let's change. Let's figure out why we are the way we are and how do we adopt a new, healthier mindset to do it.
Yeah.
I don't care how you do that.
Yeah.
Man, if you got sober going in the woods and like chopping down trees, fine. If that's what growth is so like random. For you, just, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If we all arrive at the same place, if you're out there contemplating things and your role in the world and how you handle, disagreements, like that's what it's really about. And you could do that a million different ways.
Yep.
There's not just one path to doing that. Like no one has the monopoly on that, regardless of what they say.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know. Maybe he was triggered by some 12-stepper guy that said that. I just don't agree with it.
Sounded like it.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to shift it for a moment. I want to talk about, can we kind of break down the strategies for handling change?
Sure.
So I think that there may be some Willies who are very similar to how I used to be, where they would get stuck in the really sad phase, the really sad stage of any time there was some type of change within your life. It could be with your partner. It could be with your kids. It could be something simple like with a friend or just something, something that changes within your life. You may not be able to handle it like you want to handle it. So I think that the first step is to get it off your chest of whatever feeling it is that you're feeling. If you're upset or mad, sad, angry, or whatever it is that you're feeling, get it off your chest with somebody that you can talk to, like somebody that's safe, or a community or therapist, or somebody who understands. Almost like a vent session, just to let you have to feel those feelings.
Right.
There were times where I would not feel those feelings because I felt like it was wrong to feel those feelings. So at first I would say, okay, this is just life. This happens. I'm just going to get over it. And I'd get stuck because I would eventually hit the sad part. And then that's when I would stay stuck because I wouldn't feel those feels. So let it out, feel it. Let some time pass, whatnot, maybe a couple of days, keep processing the things. Don't keep sitting in that feeling, though, after you've felt it. I think that's important. That's when we say feel the feels, feel it, and then go to the next one.
That's what your sticker says right in front of you, by the way.
Oh, yeah, it says feel the feels. Yes.
That's what we mean by that.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean stay stuck in it. Don't stay stuck in your feelings because they're going to change. But every feeling is necessary.
Yeah, they're just visitors, though. They are impermanent.
They are. They are just visitors. But a lot of us stay stuck in it because sometimes we say feel the feels, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling this way, and this means that's reality. Some people may take it that way, but that's not true necessarily. Your feelings are real, but it's not necessarily reality.
Yeah, they're not necessarily like factual descriptions of what's happening in the world all the time.
Yes, and it's not something you want to stay stuck on, because if you stay stuck on that, I promise you will keep going and spiraling and going out of control within that feeling. So what would you think the next step is?
I think that acceptance and impermanence and that concept of mano no aware are really important for me personally. Like I included a journal prompt in the newsletter this week. So just kind of walk through that just like briefly for a moment. So whatever you're going through, like as you come to terms with the end of a relationship or the end of a living situation, like if you're having to move and you don't want to move, if you've just recently lost a job, or you've got kids moving out of the house, and it's just whatever it is in your life that is causing you like this feeling of wanting to recapture something that's no longer there, and then the reality of not being able to recapture it and the sadness that comes with it. This is what I do. So I think about the moments in that situation, that relationship, whatever it might be, that brought me joy, even if they were fleeting, and taking appreciation and taking stock of the place that they played in my life at any given moment.
Yes.
And then I think about how can I cherish those things? Like in that situation with the gym, like there was a lot of things that I learned that I'm very, very grateful for. In the midst of all the chaos and the bad stuff, I kind of set that stuff aside, and I don't cling to them.
Right.
Like there was
that's good.
I don't remember. Oh my gosh, Tahna, Tahna. I think that's what it is. It's this Buddhist idea that like all life is suffering, and suffering comes from wanting. It comes from desire. That a lot of times the anger or the disappointment or the like this clinging to a situation comes from our desire to control that thing and to want that to be permanent.
Oh yeah.
It comes from that idea that like, I need this thing. I want this thing back. It's the wanting that causes pain and suffering. It's wanting. So I remove that. I'm like, okay, so, and think about it. Like if you don't want, there's no pain.
Right.
There's no desire. There's no pain.
Right.
You're in a state of acceptance.
Exactly.
You're in a state of acceptance. So
right.
Reflect on the changes that you're facing, whatever it might be, whether that's the end of a marriage, the shift of your identity, the idea of a broken family, and how can you acknowledge the impermanent nature of those things and help you find peace in that transition? To understand that these are fleeting. As much as this hurts right now, this is fleeting, and it can be here for a moment, but it will not be here forever. And then acceptance is the big one for me. So this actually did come from a 12-step story. It's this story called Acceptance Was the Answer. It's tattooed on my rib cage, actually. Not the whole thing, but just the words acceptance is the answer. And it is true for me. Like my biggest problem in life was not accepting reality. I wasn't a realist. I was either really negative about things, I was overly positive about things, but I was seldom very real about things. I may not like the situation, but it's reality.
Yes.
It is. And so as much as I can want, and that creates angst and all this negative buildup of emotions, and I could want things to be different, it doesn't change the fact that it's different. And acceptance is about looking at reality, looking at the world and saying, this simply is. It is a fact. My relationship is ending. My marriage is over. My job situation has changed. My financial outlook has changed. My kids are no longer at home. Whatever it might, maybe a passing of a loved one. You can want things to be different all day long, but you're not going to move forward in that. It's about acceptance and understand that these things simply are.
Right.
It's a really tough way to look at things sometimes because it feels brutal and it feels very like callous, but it is. This is reality.
Yes.
Like everything that's happening right now is real and this is actually happening. And so I have a decision to make. I can adapt, move forward, or I can stay stuck in wanting things to be different. And a lot of the anger that I've ever felt in my life came from wanting things to be different than they actually were. And it's like that old idiom that you use. It's like, well, okay, so wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up faster. Like it's about realism. It's about realistic perspective. Like this is what is.
You didn't listen to my Page's perspective last week, did you?
No. I haven't yet.
That's interesting.
Is that what you talked about?
Pretty much. It was about optimism, pessimism, and realism and where each one can go within certain parts of your life.
Yeah, so I think that you can honor those past experiences and you can appreciate them for what they were in your life. You can understand that things are impermanent, that they aren't forever. And that is a truth. That is just a fact of life, is that things are impermanent. Like what happened 2 seconds ago will never happen again in the exact same way it happened. Yeah. And that's beautiful and sad at the same time. And it's allowing two thoughts at once. And then ultimately it's about acceptance. Like as much as I may not like this thing, it doesn't change the fact that it's my new reality.
Right.
And you have to adapt to that. And it's about being adaptable. And that's where, for me, happiness was found. It was about being adaptable and understanding that the way the universe is right now is exactly the way it's intended to be because that's the way it fucking is.
Yeah.
And I could say it should be different, but it's not. Is it going to change anything?
But again, it's okay to have those feelings in the beginning.
Sure.
If you have those initial, anger, sadness, whatever, like this is not fair. All of that, that's okay to have those in the beginning, but eventually you'll get to a point within a few, I don't know how long the time frame is, but you'll get to a point of the acceptance piece.
Yeah, I think with impermanence and acceptance, like they're intertwined concepts that just help you navigate life with greater ease. Like you recognize that impermanence encourages us to accept that the to accept the ever-changing nature of life. And acceptance, in turn, allows us to live more fully, letting go of the resistance and then just embracing the beauty of each moment that we're living in.
Oh, it's like the seasons.
Seasons are so big to me. Like
so big.
Like
this huge life lessons.
Part of the newsletter was about that very thing. Like I get really romantic and like sad and somber about the changing of seasons.
Yes.
Like seriously, like
you do.
I sit outside and I look at the leaves and like I ride a lot on our patio in the mornings and I'll be out there and like there's this tree that we planted on Mother's Day back when we first moved in here.
Yeah.
I was, I don't know, a month sober? Or no.
No, you were a year.
Year sober.
Yeah,
year
2014.
sober. We were in here about a year and we planted this tree. And every year that tree comes back bigger and more beautiful. And like, it's a symbol of something bigger than just a tree to me. And this time of year, the leaves start to shed and it starts to fall apart. And I think about why didn't I appreciate this thing more when I was out here all summer long? I think about the time that I had with this thing and like the energy and like everything that came with it. And then it starts to die apart and fall apart. And it's sad, but it's also beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like plants are like trees are the most beautiful as they're dying. As they get nutrient deficiencies is when they turn red and yellow and orange and they get gorgeous. And there's beauty in that and there's sadness in that. And so the changing of seasons, I get really somber and sad and romantic about. Like fall is my favorite time of year, but it's, in some ways, it's the season of death. It's the season of everything coming apart, and then it becomes just these ugly sticks in the world. But if you think about that hard enough, it's beautiful in a sense too.
Yes. And
then spring comes, and it's wonderful. Like you can look at the transition of seasons and feel these very same things.
Yeah.
If you think about it long enough, it's no different than relationships and people. It's just
right.
Not.
And this is why I'm not rushing to do fall stuff yet.
I've gotten to the same point.
So Matt used to bring out Halloween decorations way sooner than me, which was quite interesting.
I'd do it in like August, late August, early September.
Yeah. And I was like, and throughout the years, I'm like, can we please just wait a little bit longer? And Matt's like, no. Matt does what Matt wants. We all know this. So I just let it go. But he's finally at a point of understanding where We need to embrace the present moment and quit trying to force things so quickly. It's still hot here. It's September. We could go swimming right now if we wanted to. I might be ready for cooler weather, but right now I'm trying to just embrace the time that we have now, because I'm going to be sad when it's gone and it's super cold outside. I'm going to want this warmth. I'm going to want the greenery. I'm going to want the trees to look the way that they look. So I'm just trying to embrace it more right now and not rush things.
Yeah, no, I'm with you
Rush the
100%.
change.
Like, it's appreciating late summer for late summer.
Yes,
Simply that.
yes.
Like,
Like,
just
this is
appreciating
it.
that it's the time and I should be present in it and stop thinking about what's next. Stop trying to force something that is not happening yet. The reality is that it's still very warm and I should be present in the moment.
Right.
And
Like,
enjoying it for what it is.
like I'm wearing very fallish
I've been staring at your shirt.
clothes.
Is this shirt inside out?
No.
It's not?
No.
Okay. Because it's French terry on the side I'm looking at, which is
No, look,
oftentimes
look.
the inside of a shirt.
Look, I can't show you because then it's on my edge right here. But no, it's not inside out.
It's
not
really
inside
cool,
out.
but it's not inside out.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But
Yeah, you're wearing like fall colors and stuff.
yeah. But so I'm kind of embracing that a little bit, slowly going into it where I'm like, oh, I kind of want to wear all cozy clothes right now. But I'm also like, no, I could maybe go swimming later to kind of get the rest of it out of me before I go on to the next step. But
Yeah. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. That's one thing that I know is factual in my life. It doesn't mean I let people walk all over me. It doesn't mean I don't have boundaries or anything else.
Right.
It just means that the reality is reality. And
Right.
like, if you need proof of the way things are supposed to be, just take a look around. This is the way that things are supposed to be right now at this very moment.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, every bit of it.
But like you said, it doesn't mean that you just allow things to happen.
No, things are impermanent.
You're able to see clearly, I think. You're able to see more clearly your situation whenever you do accept it. You accept it for what it is right now and staying present, and then you can make changes within it whenever you see more clearly.
Yeah. So there's a time and a place for venting, for needing to feel validated, for coming to an understanding about the way that your life is, you name it. But this is what we're about, is really about growth. That is what we are about. And you can't stay stuck in that place forever. At some point, you have to accept the reality of life and the reality of the situation and the impermanence of everything that you're feeling, and just be real about it. I mean, you have to be real. You have to be a realist about this stuff.
Yeah, you do.
It is never going to get better on its own without some kind of intervention or change.
Right. I know this episode's a little bit different than what we usually do, but we wanted it to be more growth oriented because that's where we're at. I don't know what's going on outside. There's cars that are pulling in and out of our driveway.
I don't know. It feels like it's about to be a raid or something. I don't know what's going on.
That's weird. That was 2 cars within 10 seconds.
I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
Super
Interesting.
weird. All right, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Okay, so until next time, I am Matt.
I'm Paige.
And we'll see ya.
Bye.